We welcome you to the Angel webinar called Global Critical Friends, Co-Creating Sustainable Practices in Teacher Education. ANGEL, as everyone knows, stands for Academic Network on Global Education and Learning, and is a network funded in 2017 to bring together all those with an interest in research on global education. My name is La Salete Coelho. I'm a researcher at the Center for African Studies at the University of Porto in Portugal, and I'm also a member of the ANGEL Advisory Board. Today, we propose an engaging session that explores the journey to become a global critical friend in teacher education. With us, we have our speakers, Taimi Nikembwa and Jacqueline van Wyk, who come from the School of Education at the University of Namibia, and Maria Sari and Marika Oikarinen, who come from the University of Oulu in Finland. They will share their learnings from the collaborative work they have been developing in building and sustaining transformative communities of practice. So thank you very much for being with us, and we pass the floor to Marika to start this engaging session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting us to this special webinar session. We have been very much looking forward to meeting with the community and sharing our experiences. We have titled our presentation Global Critical Friends in Teacher Education for Sustainability Education. Many words that I hope many of us can relate to one way or the other. And as you can see, we have a team of consisting of colleagues from the University of Namibia and University of Oulu who have joined this session. But however, we are many more than us who are here today presenting. So we are just really a handful of colleagues, but there are more of us behind this partnership that we would like to share with you today. The purpose of this webinar, as we were thinking about it, we felt that perhaps we don't want to provide a sort of a lecture, but look at more the possibilities of engaging you into discussion about what is ethical in partnerships, how can we build dialogue with the teams that we work with. Yes, so building partnerships that are more based on dialogic approaches and then also looking at ethical issues that may arise as part of the partnership development that we have to tackle. And I believe many of us have been involved in one way or the other to partnerships already over many years. So sharing some of the experiences from there. And then on the other hand, what does being reciprocal or emphasizing equity and responsible partnerships, what does it look like? What kind of theoretical concepts or epistemologies inform our processes and practices? And how do our systems and institutions support them? Some of these issues can be also quite complicated. And overall, we hope that this webinar somehow maybe contributes to the broader aim of decolonizing academic partnerships. So that's the frame we have wanted to kind of build on. But beyond that, also just looking at inclusiveness and how do we build inclusive partnerships. Well, we have a few things we would like to share with you and invite you also be part of this dialogue. I will shortly tell you a little bit more about our team, how we have sort of come together as University of Oulu and University of Namibia working collaboratively. What is the background to our partnership? And then some reflections about the theoretical framework that is really something that we are exploring through different kinds of concepts that we have come across as teacher educators, as researchers, mostly teacher educators, because many of our team members are teacher educators, but then also researchers and students. And then some findings from our partnership study. So we have focused on developing the partnership also through a research project. And then we will have some time, which I think is very important for us as a community of academics interested in partnership development and all the themes that are covered to reflect these issues together through the activities and before we conclude by planting a seed. So let's move on to the context. Well, as many of you have perhaps sort of got engaged with different kinds of networks, our network also was embarked in 2021 when the Finnish Ministry of Education and Culture provided some funding for Finnish higher education institutions to work in collaboration with partners from different Global South contexts. And the Namibian University of Namibia and University of Oulu had been partners since 1990s, so there has been lots of institutional collaborations since then. But as we all know, when funding is less, then activities may also be less. And during this period, we had the opportunity to embark on activities, but also think, how can we continue working more collaboratively, even when funding maybe is not that much, but maintain these possibilities to co-create research-based solutions, increase meaningful partnerships, initiate new internationalization, and really, you can move forward. How can we sort of take these key concepts that Jindal as a funding framework and a network kind of prompted us to think. Our partnership, as you can see from the pictures, became a journey of walking in the forests, walking in the Europe House, all which was an exploration in many ways. It engaged us very holistically. And from the very beginning, I still recall the Zoom meetings where we got together to think, what is it that we actually want to do? How can we collaboratively decide what is the focus areas of our work? We knew that from the funding perspective, we had resources to do some research, module development, develop teaching and learning content and experiences, co-supervise some postgraduate students, and also have the opportunity to wider networking. But how this all sort of evolved was a process where we got together online, but also in person to decide that these are the 3 focus areas. And in this presentation, we draw more from the environmental education and sustainability that I think over the years has had many branches that have sort of become greener, and in that ways we want to share particularly from those outcomes of this process. And yes, teacher educators, researchers, and student teachers have been part of this process. And now I will hand over to Maria to continue a little bit further to the activities.
Thank you, Marika. I just wanted to share briefly about some of the work that we did in the environmental education working group of this Jindal project, and to really highlight how, when we think about these educational partnerships, we really can think of it as we're planting these seeds as we build this community of practice. And not only in the activities that we did during the Jindal project. So some of the things that we were able to do as a flourishing community of practice was to create teaching materials with diverse stakeholders, including NGOs in Finland and Namibia, that we can use in our teacher education programs. So really connecting with various experts in the field to co-design different teaching materials. And as we'll discuss further along in today's webinar about the role of these critical friends, through that practice, we were able to take a really critical look at our own curricula and the way that whether or not we have been successful in implementing sustainability values, themes in our teacher education programs, and really learning from each other's practice. And I must add that our University of Oulu were very much the ones learning from the University of Namibia, whose sustainability education is far more advanced than what universities in Finland have been able to do. So really offering us that a mirror and a lens to see how we might move forward in really institutionalizing sustainability also in Finland. This led to one of our publications from the Gentle project, again, looking at not just the education policy and curricula, but really looking again about how these international collaborations and partnerships can help us move towards more holistic educational transformations, not just in our own institutions, but really through those collaborations beyond higher education institutions. And here are just some of the teaching materials that were co-designed by a fantastic group of environmental and outdoor education experts from Namibia and Finland. And really these helped us strengthen not just the content, but also the thematic areas that we're able to provide to our teacher educators. And again, when we think about planting a seed and growing these communities of practice, and our work didn't end with Gentle, but really it provided, the foundations and those planted those seeds for really expanding the community of practice. So this has led to an international strategic partnership between the University of Oulu and University of Namibia. We're in the second year of this international partnership, and this has really turned into an interdisciplinary, or I might say transdisciplinary project, where we engage not just with the School of Education, as we did in the Gentle project, but now we're working very closely with the Department of Wildlife Management and Ecotourism of the University of Namibia. We're also working closely with a local conservancy in Katima Mulilo region, and we're also working with the University of Western Cape, the Global Environmental Law Center. And really what began as looking at sustainability in teacher education, now we've expanded our work to work more so through school workshops, or really co-designing place-based approaches to biodiversity and sustainability education, not just with teacher educators, but also working with teachers and children in local schools through eco-literacy workshops, where we engage in philosophy with children, storytelling circles, and also engaging in ethnomusicology. In this project, we're also organizing a 2-day youth-led interspecies diplomacy event in Katima Mulilo to really center community and youth voices in reimagining not just what education might look like in the future, but reimagining governance and diplomatic structures also. So really just to highlight that the journey of these partnerships, it continues to evolve, and these critical friendships can really grow into quite flourishing ecosystems as we plant those seeds. And I'll hand back to Marika now.
Yes, perhaps also a little bit of reflection on sort of collaborative work we do to develop COIL modules. So recently our collaboration received some funding for Globus project. This is to build virtual courses for global sustainable development in Southern African collaboration. So we have 2 different courses that will develop content, framework, student assignments collaboratively, so that we can integrate different aspects from different contexts to these virtual courses. And one of the courses is on global education development. The other one will look at environmental education, and emphasis is on teacher education. So it has been interesting to see how the sort of themes that seems to be joint or common to both teacher education programs in our contexts can bring us together, and how they can make the content, the literature, the input, the case studies a lot more richer. And this process is of course something that is constantly evolving and also expanding through the UNIBID network and accessible to more students. Okay, let's move on then. Our partnership has also been a focus of research. So as a team of teacher educators and researchers, we felt that we want to also kind of see how this partnership can develop to being really something, as we know from the SDG network or SDG framework, that it would truly strengthen the means of implementation and and revitalize the achievement of the SDGs. And we wanted to study this through a collective autoethnography, meaning that we have documented our learning journey together, and these meeting notes, the audio recordings have sort of and different documents we have collected during the years have also informed our understanding of how partnership develops. And these are the two questions we wanted to explore through the partnership study. And now I will hand over to Taimi to take us through the first sort of theoretical concept that has informed our thinking.
Yes, and from the whole co-designing and partnership of the global North, global South, which we in the process actually of our journey of a partnership, we realized that we couldn't even see the binary of global North, global South anymore, because we kind of moved to the concept of oneness. We kind of became one, and we were more or less thinking the same. We had the same aspirations. We were more or less moving at the same pace. So after all that exchange of ideas and co-designing of courses and virtual courses with mobility between the two of us, our universities, and at some point we also had our student exchange between the two universities. We really then also started exploring this concept of critical friendship in educational partnerships, because at some point when you are partners and then you align your thoughts and you have you're exchanging activities and so on, there is an element where you also find the need to be critical friends. And now I want to explain a little bit about this concept of critical friendship in the context of educational partnerships. And this actually it means that institutions are critical in deconstructing educational practices and rethinking transformations throughout the process, because the main idea is to address the global learning crisis, which was from the onset one of the main objectives in the Gentle project. And as Marika already explained, dialogue is a method that is used in partnership, is one of the ways in which we communicated. And in the context of educational partnership, a critical friend is not exactly someone who is there to find to audit you or to find faults or to critique all the time, but it's rather a trusted and supportive partner who has come to that level of confidence, and one who can provide honest and reflective feedback in the process. And throughout the activities and the co-construction of ideas and co-designing of activities, you realize that you need someone as a mirror who can identify blind spots in the process. And this helps basically in improving the whole process of partnership. That person acts as a sounding board rather than an auditor. They are not there to pick out faults, but rather to listen and to be an ear and to reflect, but also to ask provocative questions. And I think we can go to the next slide, Maria. Yes, so here now we explore the importance of why critical friends are needed in educational partnerships. And we draw this from a paper by Dan, and that really explains that a critical friendship provides an outside lens. It's someone who can be objective about everything and the engagements with the partners. It helps the partners see what works and what needs to be refined. And we can look at a critical friendship as a safe space for reflection and for providing a safe psychological space to taste new ideas. If, for example, because you realize that when you are institutions, different institutions, there will be some marked differences in operational matters, for example, such as calendar-wise, the different time zones sometimes different calendars or activities that may come up after you have already scheduled in a long time, your processes and activities, and something comes up from a certain institution, and then you are not available, perhaps, then those are the things that afterwards you can reflect in a partnership and try to provide, refinement. How can we rework this? What would be the better way to schedule our meetings? What would be the best time that suits all of us in terms also of vacations? We also have different vacation holidays and so on. So those were some of the issues that we had to share as critical friends and reflect and sometimes provide each other with honest feedback on how we can tackle these and refine these habits so that we harmonize, but also sometimes to see, because there is diversity also, not if alignment is not completely possible, to see how to accommodate each other, and then these transform practices through shared reflection and dialogue. And a critical friendship should be reciprocal and not one way. And I think that is what we have been practicing. And as I said in the beginning, we really moved to the direction of oneness. And here we found an interesting model from Mark Vail and others, who tried to visualize this critical friend concept, that in this concept of critical friendship, there is both support and there is also the critique, which we want to say actually is reflective feedback. And on the left-hand side where we have support, then you see that it focuses now on facilitating development of a learning community. If we are now thinking in an educational setting, and this is also the part that also involves talking and brainstorming and encouraging one another, and where there is more interaction and there is a sense of a collaborative community, and the concept of being a sounding board, listening to a friend, and really trying to see how you can support them rather than critique them. And on the critical side, which is the right-hand side, then a friend needs to be impartial. When you provide feedback to one another, you need to be impartial, and you should not be afraid to ask provocative questions. And there is also reasoning challenging each other's thinking, reasoning, that is, and suggesting alternative ideas that might be explored, not only critiquing but providing a solution. What could be the best time for all of us to meet? And then, yes, of course, providing that critical feedback. And in the middle, then we have on both sides that dedicated time and energy goes into this, and then trusts, relationships based on trust are built, and we confirm decisions, or decisions are rejected. And of course, very critical also to understand each other's context, because when you do that, then you are able to give a balanced critique. I think Marika will continue from here.
Okay, so building on this critical friend concept, and as we were thinking about the partnerships and especially our being together and doing academic work collaboratively, another concept that we were led to was this concept of dialogue and understanding what exactly this dialogue means. What does it mean for us? How can we sort of deconstruct it and reconstruct it together? And one of the theoretical concepts that has helped us to deconstruct and reconstruct our understanding has been informed by Buber's philosophy of dialogue. And this is a type of philosophy based on the work of Martin Buber that is best known through his 1923 book, I and Thou. And Buber suggested that there are two ways to understand modes of interaction with one another and the world, human or otherwise. And the first one, which you can see there on the left-hand side, is the I-it relationship, where any being is approached as an object. Maybe an object for assistance, maybe an object for improvement, object for utilization, object for charity, just to mention a few. And this kind of I-it relationships are often based on our social attributes and perhaps preconceived ideas of anything, one another, or the unhuman that is there. Buber argued that this approach can only lead to interaction, but not to dialogue in the sense that Buber defined dialogue to be. So this I-it way of relating can be criticized for being technical, being transactional interaction, where ideas are imposed rather than reciprocally developed, as what we desired really to do in our collaboration. So then the second way to understand modes of interaction is I-thou relationship, which you can see there on the right-hand side. And this way of relating recognizes the inherent value of each being, human or otherwise, and acknowledges that we are irreplaceable in nature. And for us to enter into this kind of I-thou relationship is really rooted in practices of ethical behavior that could be demonstrated in deeds of dignity, responsibility, love, compassion. And this requires us really to go through this sort of eco-centeredness and enter into genuine dialogue and presence of whole being I and whole being thou. And it's really that this philosophy of dialogue asserts that the self is realized through authentic encounters with others, where each person is treated as a thou. And this model of dialogue, I think, is helpful in sort of reflecting how we approach one another, how we approach the world, and how we truly become authentic in the dialogue and visible in our vulnerabilities and our strengths as well. And Buber emphasized that these I-thou relations are really foundational for justice. So if we want to aim for justice in our partnerships, we should aim to build this kind of relations. And yet, as we can see in the middle of this diagram, there's the systemic social conditions, and below that the social, political and economic constructs. So in this framework, systemic social constructs are one of the key barriers to dialogical life and social justice. So this really places the responsibility of us as actors who are in some ways able to create and shape these conditions, to really see how can we create conditions where these I-thou relations, where the I-thou dialogue is possible, where it can flourish and bear fruits. As we can see, the trees on the right-hand side and left-hand side, they are coming from seeds of something that are being watered and nurtured, and they grow into trees. Both have roots somewhere, but do these trees bear the kind of fruit we want to see? That's another question. Or do they bear fruit at all? And what kind of fruit? So we need to be critical about this. And this requires a much larger approach to recognizing these social, political, economical constructs that really influence the ways in which we develop modes of interaction with one another, human or otherwise. Let's move on to the next slide. Yes, so if we think of the I-thou and the critical friendship models and these concepts and how they can maybe help us in our partnership work, first of all, Buber suggests that these I-thou relationships always happen in their own ways. So we cannot really articulate any strict terms or norms on how to build these relationships, but sort of understand the essence of what it means to be in dialogic relationship, and what are perhaps also the ways in which the conditions either prohibit or encourage us to enter into these I-thou relationships. And then critical friendship, that is characterized by, first of all, reciprocal relationships, but also, as Taimi said, willingness to be challenged, and then intrinsically motivated willingness to engage in the relationship. And in particular, this willingness to be challenged and being intrinsically motivated willingness to engage in the partnership is something that perhaps is separating critical friendships from just a regular collaboration. It is willing to be challenged so that we know the positive outcome towards which we are going to, and we need one another to really go to the right direction. So whenever we engage in I-thou relationship with one another, at the same time we reduce these I-it interactions. And in this way we can build our journey and personal transformation, but also the collective transformation towards justice and equity. Okay, then we move on to the reflections from the findings of our partnership study, and I would also like to invite Jacqueline, who has been very closely involved in the partnership aspect of our collaboration and the study itself, to also do some reflections on this. We have 3 issues that we would like to highlight as findings. First of these findings is that dialogue emerges in safe spaces. So something that we discovered is that it is really important for us to be first recognized as individuals authentically and gain a sense of safety. This is a prerequisite before we are able to become critical and very sort of engage in perhaps the hard growth part. So it's really important that we are first recognizing authentically one another in this process. And some of the things that we felt as a team that built this safe space are mutual respect, trust, dialogue, but also good humor, positive attitude, laughter, feeling that I'm appreciated. And I want to highlight here that many of us being part of this collaborative, we were at different levels of our academic careers. Our experiences of publishing, for example, were very different. We had different kinds of years of working in different kinds of contexts, schools, being teacher, and then coming to academia. And I think one thing that I personally felt is that we wanted to create space where everyone authentically can be part of this process, bringing their strengths and their vulnerabilities in the open. So I think that part of being together, finding the humor, positive attitude and laughter was very critical of this. Jacqueline, do you want to jump in to add something?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Marika. I think it's also important to note that specifically regarding the safe spaces that were created, we started off as teacher educators, and then we had the mobility for the students. And the photo that you see there was the Finnish students visiting Namibia, and you have the Namibian group and the Finnish group present. But I don't think you'll be able to see who comes from which country. And as teacher educators, we set the tone. We created that safe space that we were astonished by the interactions among the students when they had their exchanges. They felt at home, and we were now looking into their interactions, and we could see that that warmth that we have experienced and that we grew over a period of 2 years before this exchange was done. We could really see the fruit of that in how the students were so open, so ready to receive, because amongst us as teacher educators, this safe space was already established. And this was also a question that we asked to all participants that were involved in this exchange, not just the exchange, but that was involved in this partnership. And I think the positive response really emphasized the laughing that Marika referred to now, the engagement, and that created that space where we could share and learn from one another. Okay, I'll stop there. You can continue.
From working with to being with. So this theme from our study really emphasized the importance of contextual sharing, and then how we sort of had this opportunity through the shared experiences, explaining the context, explaining the educational challenges in both Finland and Namibia. We really moved from this kind of I-it approach towards the I-thou. And I particularly recall incidents where one of us was sharing that by seeing colleague exploring the school context, the school classrooms, and commenting specific issues in that classroom, I felt like I became visible. So while I'm also hearing the reflection of the colleague, I also see in different light my own education system, the classroom, the practices that are there. So these contextual moments of sharing were very impactful, and ensuring that as many of us as possible were part of the process was of course critical. So learning to work as a team where everyone is involved in one way or the other and contributing to the process was important. And the connections spread over the years. So I think one of the outcomes here was that I've connected to so many new academics and networks, which I think has carried us through up until now. Jacqueline, would you like to add anything, or Taimi or Maria? Okay, and then the third theme, empower me to empower others, institutional conditions for relational partnerships. So something that us as teacher educators, perhaps being involved in this partnership, learned through the journey is how our own membership and partnership involvement contributes to the institutional partnership interest and the internationalization strategies of our universities. And I think this was something that we learned in the process. There were so many issues that I think many of us had to be engaged with that were unfamiliar to us from the past. For example, budgeting or finances. And I think this kind of exposure was challenging. It was, of course, it happened always in the specific institutional structures and procedures. But again, I think many of us felt empowered as we went through this process. But we also realized how the bureaucracy, how the administrative, the systemic processes can be a challenge to partnership, particularly if we think of the critical friendship and the dialogue, how they enable or perhaps stumbling blocks to us being able to do the kind of work we want to do and the ways in which we want to do it. So I think that is something we also recognize as something that we want to provide more feedback of also to our own institutions to see how can we improve on partnership development by creating spaces where this kind of approaches are possible. Jacqueline, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you. So as Marika mentioned that we are all at different levels and experiences in terms of our teaching, lecturing, and research. And I think amongst ourselves, as Maria referred to us as a community of practice, we really empowered one another. It was a mentor-mentee setup without us intentionally working towards that. And I think, again, this stemmed from the safe spaces that were created. So instead of feeling that anybody is speaking down towards anyone, it was a situation or an environment that was created that was really relational. So instead of feeling judged and critical, as Taimi mentioned, it was all about reflecting on the comments that were shared. So there was no superiority in terms of position, in terms of rank, in terms of age, in terms of status, but rather this joint effort to move towards one. And this aspect of empower me to empower others did not only focus on us, like Marika mentioned now, did not only focus on us as individuals, but also at the level of our universities. I think for some of us, arranging for these meetings, these get-togethers, and inviting the dean from the faculty, inviting the executive dean to be part of these meetings, enabled us to also be empowered in some of our own structures within our university that, if not for this interaction, we might not have known that this is how some of our institutional practices really are at a different level. So I think for us in this particular group, it was extremely empowering on a research level. Whether you are a presenter or not, you were given the opportunity in a safe space to share, and eventually also created a platform where you could go outside of what was familiar to you to also share at that level. So these findings were, I want to say, they were not developed in a lab. These are lived experiences, and the approach that we used was really to speak to one another. And while there were some hiccups at the beginning in terms of the different time zones, in terms of the different university activities, we were able to align many of our activities, get together and have these meetings and engagements. Thank you.
Okay, good. I think now we have come to the end of our presentation, and I see that there are many, I think, comments and questions there on the chat, but I think perhaps what we could do is to move to the breakout room discussions, and then while you are there, then we can also take some time to look at your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Marika. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Taimi. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you for this wonderful webinar. Thank you for the seeds that you planted. Thanks for the time that you gave us. Also, a word of gratitude from Jean for those who participated. It's always a pleasure for us and an honor to see the level of enthusiasm for our activities. So thank you very much for being here. I would also, before closing, would like to remind you that there is the next Angel Conference on the 10th and 11th of September. It will be in Bologna, and the registrations are now open. So I hope to see you all there in person to plant seeds together. So thank you very much, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.